Welcome to Sands of Time, where history comes alive. When the long migrations finally ended, humanity had reached every corner of the Earth. The world was no longer a map of unknown lands. It was home. From the grasslands of Africa to the cold plains of Europe, families began to stay longer in one place. They built camps near rivers, hunted nearby herds, and gathered food with rhythm and knowledge. Life slowed, and people began to observe the seasons, the stars, and each other. The endless journey had turned into a way of living. This was the world before farming, before writing. A time when human life was simple but deeply connected to nature. Every sunrise meant survival, but also learning, memory, and story. This is where human society truly began. Not with cities or kings, but with small bands of people sharing firelight, food, and the first ideas that would shape civilization. Around 20,000 years ago, the world was divided not by nations, but by landscapes, forests, plains, deserts, and coasts. Each region shaped how early humans lived. In Africa's savannas, small bands built temporary camps near watering holes. They hunted gazelle and antelope, using stone-tipped spears and traps. Children gathered berries and roots, learning from the land that had raised their kind since the beginning. Far to the north, in the cold lands of Europe, groups survived near frozen rivers and dense pine forests. They built shelters from wood, bones, and animal hides. Fire burned constantly, not just for warmth, but to keep away wolves and darkness. Life was harsh, but their cooperation kept them alive. In Asia, people followed herds across grasslands and river valleys. Some settled near caves or cliffs, leaving traces of their lives in painted walls and discarded tools. Along the coasts of Southeast Asia, others gathered shellfish, hunted small game, and used rafts to move between islands. Everywhere, the pattern was the same: small groups of 20 to 50 people, bound by family and trust. These were clans, the earliest social units in human history. They shared food, tools, and stories. Elders taught survival skills. Hunters protected the group. Gatherers sustained it. The world was vast, but humans had learned to belong to it. Each campfire marked a small circle of safety in the wilderness, a space where cooperation, memory, and early leadership began to form. These camps and clans were not yet civilizations, but they were their seeds, the first signs of organized human life spread across continents, adapting to every environment the Earth offered. Life for early humans followed the rhythm of nature. Every day was guided by the rising and setting of the sun, the movement of animals, and the changing of seasons. There were no clocks or calendars, only instinct, memory, and observation. In the wide plains of East Africa, mornings began with movement. Hunters tracked fresh footprints in the dust, reading signs left by antelope or wild cattle. Women and children searched for edible roots and fruits before the midday heat. By afternoon, the group returned to camp, where food was shared equally among all. Cooperation was survival. In colder regions of Europe and Central Asia, life moved to a slower beat. People stayed near caves or shelters through long winters, rationing dried meat and fat. They repaired tools, shaped new spear points, and prepared hides for clothing. When spring came, they followed the melting snow and returning herds, restarting the hunt once more. Along the river valleys of South Asia, families camped near water, fishing with sharpened sticks and simple nets. Evenings were moments of rest. People gathered around fires, cooked together, and told stories of hunts and ancestors. These stories kept memory alive and gave meaning to life's struggles. This was the human rhythm. Move, hunt, share, rest, repeat. Every generation passed down lessons through practice, not words on paper. Children learned when to follow the herds, when to plant a trap, when to move to higher ground. It was a life of constant change, yet full of balance. Early humans lived in step with the Earth's cycles, the rains, the migrations, the stars above. This daily rhythm shaped not only their survival, but the beginnings of culture, teaching them harmony with the world around them. Fire was more than warmth. It was the first spark of human imagination. Around campfires, early people found light in the darkness and safety from predators. But fire also changed how they thought. It brought gathering, conversation, and wonder. In the grasslands of East Africa, small bands sat around glowing embers after the hunt. Flames danced, shadows moved, and faces flickered in orange light. Here, ideas began to form. People shared stories of great hunts, spirits in the wind, or dreams seen in sleep. Around these fires, imagination was born. In colder Europe, fire meant survival. The caves of southern France and northern Spain still hold blackened walls where fires once burned. There, by torchlight, people painted animals, mammoths, bison, and horses, with colors made from earth and ash. These were not just pictures. They were thoughts turned into symbols, moments of memory fixed in time. Fire also changed how people ate and lived. Cooking made food softer and safer, giving more energy to the growing brain. Scientists believe this extra energy helped humans think more deeply, plan better, and dream bigger. From Africa to Asia, fire marked the beginning of technology, controlled energy. Sparks from stones, friction from sticks, or embers carried in bark containers all showed foresight and skill. Fire meant control over nature, but also respect for it. At night, under stars, the glow of the campfire became a world of its own, where light met darkness and imagination took shape. Around these fires, humans became storytellers, artists, and thinkers. The mastery of fire was not just a survival tool, it was the key that opened the human mind. With it, we began to see not only the world as it was, but as it could be. Before nations and cities, humanity lived through family, the small circle of kin bound by blood and trust. In a world filled with danger, survival depended not on strength alone, but on loyalty. Early humans learned that safety came from sticking together. Across the plains of East Africa, small clans moved with the seasons, a few dozen men, women, and children traveling as one. Each person had a role. Hunters brought meat, gatherers found fruits and roots. Elders shared memory and advice. Around the fire, children learned by watching, listening, and helping. Life was simple, but it was deeply connected. In the valleys of ancient India, groups built semi-permanent camps near rivers. Here, cooperation meant life or death. When someone was injured or sick, others cared for them. Food was shared, not hoarded. These small acts of kindness strengthened the group and made early humans different from other animals. Archaeological finds, healed bones, buried remains with flowers or tools, show that people cared for one another long before civilization. Burial rituals suggest emotion, empathy, and respect for the dead. Trust was not just a feeling, it was a survival skill. As clans grew, so did complexity. Marriages linked groups together, forming larger tribes. Through marriage and trade, people built networks, early social systems that stretched beyond bloodlines. But trust could also be fragile. Disputes over food, jealousy, or territory could divide clans. Conflict taught early humans the cost of betrayal and the value of peace. These bonds of blood and trust laid the foundation for everything that would follow: friendship, alliance, and community. In the simplest form of human society, we learned what it meant to belong, and that together we were stronger than alone. As humans began to think beyond survival, they started to ask questions about life, death, and the world around them. In caves, forests, and open plains, early people began forming beliefs. They didn't have temples or written prayers, but their rituals and stories gave meaning to their lives. In southern France and northern Spain, deep within dark caves, people painted animals, bison, horses, and mammoths, using red ochre and charcoal. These were not decorations. They were acts of belief. Before a hunt, people might gather to chant, clap, or draw images to call for success. Firelight flickered across the walls, making the animals seem alive, spirits dancing in the shadows. In the green valleys of Africa, small tribes began to bury their dead with care. Shell beads, animal bones, or flowers were placed beside the body. These simple gestures showed something new: respect for the unseen, perhaps a belief that life continued after death. Around nightly fires, stories grew. Elders told of how the stars came to be, how the first people met fire, or how animals spoke in ancient times. These tales carried lessons about courage, danger, and the balance of life. Storytelling became a way to teach and to unite. Over time, rituals and stories created shared identity. When a group danced, sang, or remembered their ancestors together, they felt connected, not just to each other, but to something greater. These early expressions of faith and imagination were the roots of religion and culture. Through song, dance, and symbol, humanity learned to explain what could not be seen. In those moments by firelight, the first myths were born, the earliest whispers of the human spirit, reaching toward the unknown. As the Ice Age slowly ended around 12,000 years ago, the world began to warm. Glaciers melted, rivers swelled, and new forests spread across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Animals like mammoths disappeared, while deer, wild cattle, and boars filled the grasslands. For humans, the environment was changing, and so was their way of life. In the fertile valleys of the Near East, small groups began to stay longer in one place. They built sturdier shelters from mud and stone, and over time, they noticed something remarkable. Seeds dropped near their camps would sprout into plants. This observation, simple yet revolutionary, began the slow shift from gathering to growing. In regions like the Levant and Anatolia, people experimented with wild grains, barley, wheat, and lentils. Instead of constantly moving, they started returning to the same areas each year. With time, their camps became seasonal villages. In East Asia, similar changes were taking place with millet and rice. In the Americas, early peoples began tending squash and maize. Though still hunters and foragers, these early farmers were laying the groundwork for a new world. Food became more reliable, populations grew, and storage pits and pottery appeared for the first time. With more time and stability, new ideas flourished. People crafted better tools, traded stone and shells, and formed closer ties with their neighbors. The rhythm of life was shifting, from the chase to the cultivation of the land. These were the seeds of change, the quiet beginnings of the Neolithic revolution. Humanity was standing on the threshold of something entirely new, the power to shape nature itself. What began with a few grains planted in the soil would soon transform the world forever. Humanity had come far from its wandering beginnings. Across forests, rivers, and plains, people had learned to survive together, to share food, stories, and dreams. The world had changed, and so had they. Camps had become villages, tools had become more refined, and the first hints of farming and trade had begun to take root. This was the dawn before civilization, a time when humans stood between the wild and the world they were about to build. The spark of progress had been lit, but the great transformation was still to come. In the next episode of Sands of Time, Origins, we step into Episode 8, Voices of the Divine, the First Prophets and the Awakening of Faith, where we uncover how ancient humans began to see the sacred in nature, life, and death, and how belief became one of the oldest forces shaping the human story.